In life, getting overwhelmed is never about if, but always about when. But the question is, when we become overwhelmed, when life throws everything at us, what do we do? How do we respond? A few years ago, I was with a group from college, and we were in Israel for several months. It was an incredible experience. We were at a bus stop in the old city of Jerusalem, and we were waiting for our bus to go to wherever we wanted to be at that time. And I was standing behind the bench. There were several of the other students with me that were just sitting on the bench, and I was standing there just sort of pacing it a little bit, maybe nervous. I'm not sure why I was nervous, but as I was standing there at the bench, sort of behind the bench, I was kicking the bench with my foot, just sort of tapping it, just in a nervous way. And I noticed that there was a black satchel that was underneath the bench. And I even sort of kicked it a little bit and was standing there. And when all of a sudden, the whole place just exploded with people yelling and screaming and all kinds of ruckus going on around us. And then everyone was moving away. Of course, we didn't understand what was happening or why it was happening. But as we sat there, we looked at each other sort of puzzled, thinking, what is going on? About that time, there was an Israeli soldier that came running toward us with his gun. He was pushing his back with the motion of his gun, yelling something in Hebrew. Now, we had picked up several words in Hebrew, but we had no idea what was happening or what he was saying. But he was panicked, and he was pushing his back, and we sort of stood up and thought, what is going on? And then in the background, in English, we finally heard someone yell the word bomb, which just put every one of us in an absolute panic. To say we were overwhelmed is an understatement. We quickly got up and just moved to the side and where the crowd was sort of watching. And as we did, all of a sudden we saw that the soldiers were making a circle around the bench at the very satchel that I was kicking earlier. As I stood there with my friends, I thought, you know what? If that's a real bomb, I don't want to be here. We need to get out of here. So we ran and got on a bus. We didn't even know where the bus was, where it was going, or anything about it. All we knew is we needed to get out of there. We needed to run away. And we did. We got on the bus and it drove away, and we eventually got to the right bus. But that was our response. Let's just run. Later, we were at the very edge of and actually got to sleep that night in a camp around the fortress of Masada. Masada is this huge mountain with a flat top, and on top of that was a fortress that the Israelites had built and fended off the Romans in about the year 73. So it was fun to sort of climb up the side of it. It had huge steps. And as I was running up the side of Masada, of course, couldn't run all the way up because it was so steep and took so long. But as I was running up the steps, I just thought, no wonder they could defend the Romans, because you could look down and see the encampments where the stone walls were, where the Romans held and sort of encamped when they were attacking Israel. You get to the very top of it, the fortress, and you walk around Masada, and then I came over to one side where I was stunned, because that's where the Romans had constructed these huge catapults that they used to throw rocks up on the side of the mountain. And they did this year after year after year after year until they built a ramp. And they built a ramp so that they can come in and defeat the fortress. I thought, wow, this was a great place for Israel to hide. But in the end, it didn't work out. In the end, they were defeated in about the years 73 AD. But when they got to the fortress, they found that there was no one there, because all the people that were there, almost 1,000 of them, went to the edge of a cliff and slowly, one by one, threw each other off until everyone committed suicide. And that made me think about another thing. Not only do we hide when we're overwhelmed, but we also just come to the point where we just give up, that it just seems too hard. What do we do when we are overwhelmed? What do we do when we cannot handle the situation anymore? Sometimes we just run away. Sometimes in life, we just find a nice place to hide, sort of a fortress of our own making. We think this will take care of everything. And then other times we just get to the point where we just want to give up. But the question is, what do you do when you're overwhelmed? Where do you run? Matthew 11:28 says, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Jesus has a place to go when we're overwhelmed.